It's May 10th, 1997, and another remarkable event is about to be uncovered by Arion, Rebecca, and Olly, the Retrospectors.
So this was the day that Annette Sorensen, a tourist from Denmark, was arrested in New York City. It wasn't her first visit. She'd actually had a liaison there as a student, and she'd come back to introduce her daughter to the father of the child, and they were both subsequently arrested for abandoning the baby outside a barbecue restaurant. She had her baby in a pram, which she, without thinking, left outside, as she would go on to say, is commonplace in her home country.
Let's just interrogate that for just a moment. Is it really commonplace in not just Denmark but Scandinavia, because that was the claim, wasn't it, to leave your child outside in the cold for an hour whilst you have a meal?
Well, I actually looked up one of the Danish tourism board's main websites, denmark.dk, and they have all sorts of great information about why life in Denmark is so magnificently wonderful.
You don't have to eat with your kids!
Yeah.
Actually, I'm there.
That's the main one. That's the homepage. No, they've got a page that's answering the question, why are Danes so happy? And it's got all sorts of bluff and waffle and stuff about trusts being an essential characteristic of Danish society and how everyone loves paying their taxes and all of that. But it ends with the following. It says, it is also common practice for parents to leave their babies outside in their carriages to nap, even during the chilly Danish winter, which I think must have been an amendment based on the fact that this whole story unfolded, surely.
Okay, so what happened, Rebecca? She was having a drink and left her kid outside.
If you look into contemporary reports, Sorensen potentially wasn't quite as naive and blameless as she would later come to appear. Other patrons and wait staff had told her to bring the girl inside, and she had basically just dismissed it, which fair enough, it's not necessarily their business. Anyway, an hour later the police arrive, and then it kind of goes from a kind of humorous parenting culture clash thing, very quickly snowballs. She and the baby's father, whose name was Xavier Wardlow, are taken into police custody, where they remain for 36 hours. She's strip searched. Liv, the baby, is taken away by New York's Child Services.
That bit about her being strip searched was the bit that A, I didn't really understand, and B, I couldn't find any further information on. I was like, what were they aiming to uncover? The fact that she was squirreling other children about her person?
Yeah, that was bizarre. And Wardlow as well later went on to file a suit saying that he'd been abused by police as well. It's very quickly turned very dark and strange.
Yeah, because there were lots of lawsuits, which is, I suppose, as much of a New York convention as arguably leaving your child outside in the winter is a Scandinavian one, right? So as soon as the kid was reunited with Annette Sorensen, the mother, there then followed a sequence of events which ended up with multiple lawsuits about this obviously very unfortunate incident, but one that you kind of think if someone was just completely blameless and had got caught up in it as a Danish tourist and it was just genuinely a case of, oh, I didn't realise that's how things were done, it wouldn't have ended up with, at one point, her trying to sue the city for $20 million.
Yeah. I was trying to work out where that figure came from. And she didn't win it, ultimately. She got something in the realms of 60,000. But yeah, that's a huge sum to be asking for in the first place.
Well, the judge then overturned that award, I understand, Rebecca, so she didn't even get her 60 grand. And that was, in 2003, this was still going on.
It was,
5 years
it's still going
after.
on. I mean, she's written a book about it as well, which she started a Kickstarter project to have it translated into English. I mean, to be fair, it did cause a lot of comment at the time. It was real fodder for the newspapers on both sides of the Atlantic, actually, and it was obviously portrayed very differently. In Denmark, her case was described as a grotesque nightmare, every parent's worst fear, etc., etc. Whereas the crazy thing about the US coverage is how hard the commentators at the New York Times and the New York Post leaned into the idea that New York was some kind of hellhole.
It was still a pretty rough city. I mean, I actually looked up New York City's own tourism board.
I think that website's probably very different to the one from Copenhagen, isn't it?
well,
don't leave your baby on the street or you're out of your mind. That's page 1. You got a kid here, forget about it. Leave him inside.
Actually, that is how the voice in my head sounds.
Yeah, New Yorkers listening, that's what we think you're all like. You're basically all Robert De Niro or Jackie Mason.
But page 1 actually is kind of saying New York is a really nice place. And in fact, it says the truth is that New York City is one of the safest big cities in the world. But then it quickly goes on to say, just to be cautious, you might want to consider the following things. don't go to Central Park at night, stay away from areas of the city that are empty and deserted late in the evening, avoid taking the subway, try to look like a local, don't look at your map, don't look at buildings, don't look at anything. It just sort of gets increasingly kind of panicked as it goes along.
Well, I suppose it's when things go wrong, they go very wrong in a way that they're unlikely to in Denmark. I suppose that's the difference.
Annette Sorensen said afterwards that US parents live in fear and criticised American society for not having tillid, but I'm not so sure if I'm saying that right. Literally just means trust in Danish, but it's more of that. It's used to describe the kind of broader phenomenon of the fact that Danes have an incredibly high sense of trust in society. That's probably because it's a relatively wealthy, homogenous society. But there is that amount of trust. People obviously leave their babies outside cafes, restaurants, etc. But also roadside stalls are really popular in Denmark because people believe that customers will honour an honesty box, that kind of thing, which obviously definitely does not exist in New York. Some of the opinion writers said that you can really tell the difference between the attitudes in the countries as well, because there's almost like a sort of possessive way that the American journalists were writing about children, where they were saying New York's a city where people chain down their garbage cans, like how could you leave a loose pram with a baby in outside, which is just a really strange way of looking at it, like somebody would be equally
it's a bigger
motivated.
decision, isn't it, to steal a child than to look through someone's bin for a bottle of bourbon?
Yeah.
So what's the plan? Chain the baby carriage to the lamppost.
Chain the baby to the baby
carriage.
Yeah. It's a very complicated system of chaining.
If it were possible for us, let's take London as an example, as being a sort of cultural halfway point, I guess, between Copenhagen and New York. If it were possible to leave a baby outside in the cold in London when I went for, let's take away the alcohol from this and make it a bit less hard-edged, a coffee, right? If that was the cultural norm, would I welcome that or not? I suppose the sense of it is a kid wrapped up for winter is wearing a lot of layers. And actually, if they then fall asleep, you're then bringing them into a coffee shop where there's not going to be a big amount of space for that buggy either. Like, you have to push past people and it takes up a load of room. And then the kid's going to overheat, which is much more likely, really, to be dangerous for their health than someone stealing them, which is quite unlikely. So then you take their sort of romper suit thing off, and then they wake up, and then they ruin everyone's coffee.
And the system is a point of pride in Danish society. I mean, at the time, American magazines were incredulously publishing articles showing photos of Copenhagen cafes with prams lined up outside. There were sort of almost notes for the American audience pointing out things like, big old-fashioned prams were more popular in Denmark rather than, sort of modern-style strollers, so they wouldn't have been able to get them into cafes, that kind of thing. But it is true that there have been studies that suggest that babies do sleep better outside. In fact, years ago, when me and my family were in Kelso in the borders visiting family, we went to my cousin's house after she just had one of my baby cousins, and we walked right up her front garden and the pram was parked outside. We just walked past it. We came in and we were like, oh, where's the baby? And she said, did you not see him? He's outside. And she had the pram parked right outside, in the Scottish, I think it was Scottish summer, but still not exactly what you call balmy.
Everyone else's winter, isn't it? I mean,
I'm just amazed that you walked past a baby carriage that wasn't attached to anything and you didn't think to make off with it.
Like you do with every bin you walk past, Rebecca.
Right.
I mean, Arion, you have a baby. Have you ever let her sleep outside? And what's the weirdest place you've left your child sleeping?
I haven't done. And it's funny. So my wife's parents are from out in Sussex, and their next door neighbour in this sort of bucolic country village-like location is a big advocate of just leaving your kids outside. And particularly, she said when they were crying, she preferred to just roll them outside and just let them get on with it.
It's all for their benefit. Yeah, it's the fresh air.
She said that's the way they become strong. But we haven't tended to go down that route. We've tended to be a bit sort of helicopter parenty or whatever and watch over our baby daughter quite closely. So I don't think she's gone to sleep anywhere particularly unusual. What about you, Olly?
Well, so the current baby, who's now 18 months old, is fresher in the mind. I have taken him for a walk in, you can get one of those, it's basically a backpack, but it's like a rucksack that's designed for babies to go on your back when you're walking around in.
Yeah.
So when I'm about to say I've left him asleep in a bag, it is a bag that's designed for a baby to sit in, right? But I've been carrying him in that bag for a walk, and then inevitably he's fallen asleep. If it times perfectly with what I want to be his nap time, imagine the scene. I'm then standing in the garden. We're both wrapped up warm. Like I say, if I bring him in, he's going to be too hot. I have left him, there's a little lever on the bag so that it stands up.
I thought you were going to say so he drops out the bottom of it.
No, I've left him standing up in the garden ensconced in a bag. But it's in my private garden, which is not overlooked by anything, and it is a purpose-designed item. And I've checked on him. You know, every 5 minutes I've gone back to check he hasn't fallen on his face. I mean, that's the risk, is that the cat jumps on the bag and then the bag just falls straight down.
And so another week of retrospecting ends. But next week begins a day early at Club Retrospectors. Join us now to get an exclusive episode every Sunday. Patreon.com/retrospectors.
Welcome to another round of Drawing Board or Miro Board. Today we discuss technical diagramming with systems architect Maya. Let's go. First question. You've spent 10 hours slogging over a sequence diagram that should have taken 5. Drawing board or Miro board?
Drawing board. And if I'm being honest, Miro would probably cut that time down by half. You know, with its AI tools and ready-to-go templates.
Next, your diagrams become so bulky, it's more complex than the solar system. But all it takes is a few clicks and...
It's Miro. I've used those technical shape packs way too many times.
Now, the final question. Everyone's brought in, but you have to make all these tasks all the way over in Jira. But wait, it's done. Is it...
Miro, easy with its two-way Jira sync. Easy to plot dependencies. Everyone always knows what's up.
And she's done it.
For a limited time, visit Miro.com/diagram now and get a free business plan trial to unlock even more features like advanced shapes, dependency mapping, and two-way Jira syncing. Get started today at Miro.com/diagram now.